Well, guys, over 75% of Americans are dealing with freezing temperatures as the country is getting hit with a once-in-a-generation storm. Yep. Of course, when it's this cold, it's important to check in on the elderly. That's why President Trump spent all day on the phone like, he doesn't live here anymore, and I'm fine.
Isn't that great? 2 days after Joe Biden leaves, suddenly they're doing the president is old jokes. 4 years like the Soviet Union, hermetically sealed off. No humor involving the age of Joe Biden, who couldn't make it up 3 steps for 4 years. But pay no attention to that. Bum, 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 bum. Well, it's hump day. Hump day in America. It's Wednesday. A very good Wednesday to you. Boy, President Trump is a busy man. Our country's busy. Our news media, I suspect a number of them on the brink of self-immolation. Could be a lot of self-immolation going on in the near future. If you have a family member, a loved one, I always liked the term loved one, who's, a hardcore Democrat, and I said that you should probably be on suicide watch. I think there's a good portion of the country, tens of millions of people, ought to be on, like, Jeffrey Epstein-style suicide watch. So turn the cameras off, turn the lights off, remove the guards, because that's what they do, right? That's the Democrat Party suicide watch. Make sure there's nobody around and the cameras are unplugged and there's no video anywhere. That's the thing. We've got a lot going on. I'm pleased to announce that now in the United States government, there are only 2 genders. Only 2 genders. And I mentioned this yesterday. My best girl's sister visiting us with her boyfriend from the Atlanta, Georgia area came in for the inauguration and inaugural balls and stayed with us. And we had a wonderful time, and they're great. And they were downtown because, there was no inauguration out on the mall. So they found themselves at a tavern watching the swearing in, and not far from the Capitol they were. Watched the swearing in and President Trump's inaugural speech, where he said, from now on, among other things, that there will be 2 genders. There are 2 genders, according to the federal government of the United States of America, which is a positive development, I think, given what we've known about biology for thousands of years that the Democrat Party has set on fire, and amazing stuff. So 2 genders, isn't that wonderful? But my sister-in-law and her best guy, downtown Washington, just after Trump's inauguration, and a Democrat walked by them, muttering, obviously frustrated, and he said out loud, by himself, he's by himself, but there are people around him who are Trump supporters, and he said, "Oh, great, now there are only 2 genders." That's what he said. Oh, great, now there are only 2 genders. That's what, and it was obviously a male person, not much of a male person, kind of a delta male, but never mind that. Oh, great, now there are only 2 genders. And my thought is, hey, great, now there are only 2 genders. As opposed to the Democrats, how many did they have in San Francisco? I think 140 or something, 140 genders approximately from the Democrats. There's a lot of mental illness out there. President Trump has returned the bronze bust of Winston Churchill to the Oval Office, which is nice. I always thought it was kind of weird that Joe Biden in his Oval Office had a portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the wall, and who was the first Republican president ever. And then he was shot in the head and murdered by a Democrat who loved slavery, as, they all do. They still do. Now they call it illegal aliens. Well, now they call it undocumented immigrants who are there to clean their dishes and mow their lawns. That's your Democrat Party. Hey, isn't that what the bishop said yesterday? Isn't that what the bishop said? But in any event, Joe Biden in the Oval Office, he had a bronze bust of Martin Luther King, right? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and a bust of Bobby Kennedy. And they were both shot and killed in the same year by assassins, one by a Palestinian, Sirhan, of course, sometimes known as Sirhan. But he's still alive and well, eating culturally sensitive meals in a prison in California, even though he made parole last year. But it might have even been 2 years ago now that he made parole. And then, of course, the Martin Luther King Day was Monday, and the Democrats never like to remember that James Earl Ray, who shot and killed Martin Luther King, was a Democrat Party presidential campaign volunteer. Somehow that's been written out of the script because it's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? But Joe Biden in the Oval Office, a bust of Martin Luther King, shot in the head and killed, a bust of Bobby Kennedy, shot in the head and killed, under a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, shot in the head and killed. I see a theme emerging here. You have a death wish or something? What's going on? Because that's kind of weird. But in any case, President Trump mixing it up, and he did bring back, the Democrats pulled the bust of Winston Churchill, too great a champion of Western civilization. And you know how the commies hate that. The left, they hate that. But the Winston Churchill bust is back. Isn't that the one that, who is it? The Obama people said they lost it or they gave it back to the British. It was all a big lie. It was all a big lie. The Resolute desk, that was a gift from Queen Victoria, made from the timbers of an old wooden ship. I think is the thing there. President Trump also announcing no more DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion offices in the federal government. Everybody that is in a DEI office should leave by 5:30 today. Get out because you don't have a job there anymore. Now, for now, at least, and, government unions, which even FDR was against, but never mind that, they're going on paid leave, paid administrative leave. But at least they won't be doing the damage from inside the government that the left wing, that radical left wing racist segregationists, Democrats want to inflict. Remarkable stuff. And speaking of which, the Trump administration is also, through the State Department, the Department of State, Marco Rubio, our new Secretary of State, he's talking about peace in Europe. Imagine that, a chief diplomat in the United States talking about ending war in Europe. Why? The Democrats are loving just fueling the military-industrial complex because, look, the Democrats, not like the Democrats have gotten us into any wars or overseen our entry into any wars, except, of course, for the American Civil War and World War I and World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And then they set us up to fail for September 11th during the Clinton administration. But other than that, they really have a pretty good record when it comes to, aren't they amazing? So, but at the State Department, they've announced that from now on at American embassies and embassy buildings around the world, the only flag that they will fly will be the American flag. Red, white, and blue, stars and stripes. The American flag will fly at American embassies, but not LGBTQ or transgender flags or Black Lives Matter flags, while they abort 40% of the black population in the United States of America and then congratulate themselves as the party of slavery and Jim Crow for being so pro-black people. So we got that. Embassies around the world, American embassies, will fly the American flag and not Democrat Party mental illness flags, which is really what, at this point, they all represent. Hey, transgender children. Oh, speaking of which, the bishop. It's the bishop. And every time I see this woman, I'm reminded of Monty Python. She, the Episcopal bishop at the Washington National Cathedral, the Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul, who spoke, let's say, at the cathedral yesterday. It's an annual, a quadrennial, every 4 years, a quadrennial event. After the inauguration of the president, the next day there is a prayer service at the National Cathedral. And the radical left-wing, Trump-hating, she proved in 2020 she wanted Trump replaced. She's very vocal, and she's all about the LGBT and trans. In which book of the Bible does it have the passages about transgender children playing duck, duck, goose? Because I missed that part. Isn't that amazing? But she has stirred up a hornet's nest, and not just in Washington, but way beyond, with the left-wing politics of fake clergy members. And I think that the bishop would have to fall into that category. She's last Sunday's sermon, she was talking about the 10 suggestions, and thou, probably shouldn't kill if you're not really motivated to do so, right? Because that's one of the 10 suggestions, and shouldn't go around cheating on your spouses unless somebody's really hot. In which case, it's not really they're not commandments at all. They're just 10 suggestions. She's not exactly. I think she's not running for Pope. Let's say, pretty remarkable stuff. And I got to say, and this is making the rounds this morning, and it's smart, that from now on, Republican presidents should no longer attend events at the National Cathedral unless it's like Jimmy Carter's funeral, something like that. But for events where you can pick and choose, maybe a Catholic church. You have St. Matthew's Cathedral, downtown Washington, M Street, where John F. Kennedy's funeral was, where little John saluted, standing out front, a famous picture. It's a great place. There's also the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception it's the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception of the Catholic University of America, the largest cathedral in Washington, D.C., and a Catholic cathedral, and you're probably not going to get preached at about transgender children. At least I hope not. I'm signing the cross, and I don't believe you will. And as my friend Larry O'Connor said, the son of the great Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, his son is a Catholic priest at a church in Virginia, not too far out of Washington, D.C. That might be a good church to go to for events. President Trump, who has fairly recently said, he's Christian, but he's non-denominational. And J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism, was not raised Catholic, but not too long ago actually converted to Catholicism. And perhaps that might be a determining factor as well. So we've got a lot of President Trump very busy. The headline in the Washington Times, your newspaper of record, Trump vows golden age. That there is a new day in America. There's no doubt about it. And it's the Biden era is over. I'm happy to be able to report. And I'm just scratching the surface on some of the things we have today. But headlines all over the place. Left-wing radicals who've never been to church in their lives. Trump scolded by bishop over immigration. Now, that's illegal alien gang members, murderers, and rapists. She's in favor of child sex trafficking across our border. She's in favor of the cartels becoming billionaires over the dead bodies of Americans dying in fatal drug overdoses. She's not on the side of the United States of America or Western civilization. She's a left-wing political activist, I'm sorry to have to say. But there it is. Trump scolded by bishop over immigration, LGBTQ policies. Shouldn't that be LGBTQQIAA $? Because they got a lot going on over there, and none of it's very clever. At National Prayer Service, have mercy, in quotation marks, on those who fear, and I love this, always the hysteria, always the apocalyptic stuff, over those who fear for their lives. Why would they fear for their lives? Maybe they should stay away from the border, because when you're along the border, you should fear for your life, Reverend. They call her a priest. I think they call her a priest there. Dem DC Bishop lectures Trump on migrants during prayer service, irking the Don. At inaugural prayer service, Bishop pleads for Trump to have mercy on LGBTQ plus people. Well, this is not Iran. I don't know what country you people are living in. But, LGBTQ is in everybody's face all day, every day. And nobody's bothering you. Almost all, and by the way, being transgender makes you less likely to be murdered in the United States than not being transgender, statistically speaking, just by the way. But when those do happen, it's usually by another transgender person, just by the way. Now, President Trump has responded to that on social media, on Truth, and I have his response coming up. We've got that. The embassies now flying American flags. Oh, yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is on the loose again. I don't know if she's trying to get dumber, but if she's trying to get dumber, I think she's meeting with some success. We've got great, and you see the mayor of Philadelphia. The mayor of Philadelphia is a Democrat, and she's cheering on her Eagles or her Eggleses or whatever they are. She's coming up too. Democrats don't have good brains, I've discovered. And maybe we'll have some Reverend Al Charlatan for you, too. He's a Democrat. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris. Also, all the fascist media now calling Elon Musk Adolf Hitler, right? He's doing the Hitler salute because he waved or raised his hand. Therefore, he's Hitler. And then they killed 40% of the black population. And opened the door to child sex traffickers on our southern border because, let's go to the telephones, Michael. We're at 888-630-9625, and it is Mailbag Day here on the Chris Plante Show. Let's go to Bob, calling from Ashburn, Virginia. Oh, Bob, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Bob.
Listen, I want to speak from two things, okay? Bishop Butte was a total disgrace yesterday in that National Cathedral, and I'm very upset. I'm a lifetime Episcopal congregant. My grandfather, my great-grandfather founded the Episcopal Church in New York. Okay?
Okay.
My wife and I were married in an Episcopal church in Maryland. We were married for 50 years. My wife was African-American. I have 2 African-American children. And I'm just so fed up with this wokeness. Pauli Murray, one of the original ministers, female ministers who was a gay person, was a frequent visitor at my father's and mother's house, a gracious lady. The lady that's a spokesman and bishop now for the Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., is a total and absolute disgrace.
Well, I got to say, we've got her coming up, Bob, and she has, let's just say, gotten the attention of an awful lot of people. Maybe that's what she wanted. Coming up. Yes. Yeah, President Trump and Vice President Vance, and those are their actual titles now. They should go to church services in and or around Washington in the coming weeks, not at the National Cathedral in Washington because of the political takeover there. Now, there's a lot to get to just on this subject because it's kind of a big deal, if you know what I'm saying. It's the National Prayer Service the day after Inauguration Day. It is a quadrennial tradition in the United States of America. Quadrennial means every 4 years for people that aren't Washington people. It's quad, that's 4. Annual, that's years. So it's no, that's so we got that. And the news media, they're all over this because they think that she really gave it to him. She really stuck it to him. And again, I think maybe Catholic priest Father Paul Scalia, a scholar, a writer, a thinker, a devout, a Catholic priest, not a political activist masquerading as a representative of the Christian church. But President Trump yesterday decided that he had had enough of this. And he was very gracious during the event, the ceremony, such as it was at the National Cathedral in Washington. Now, the whole area was shut down around there with military vehicles, Humvees, troops in camouflage, troop trucks. The area was shut down like nobody's business. We're becoming a third world city, Washington, D.C., on our way to becoming a third world country because the left is here. Make no mistake. But President Trump on Truth Social wrote, the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left, hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. I think that's true and fair. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and unsurprising one. Uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. And I think they owe President Trump an apology as well. And I think the Episcopal Church owes an apology. This is, if this is the role that you wish to play, you're entitled to play that role. But don't pretend that you're a house of worship and a Christian church when you're advocating for transgender children, which leads to all kinds of mental issues and family issues and skyrocketing rates of at least attempted suicides and, in many cases, completed suicides. Trying to transgenderize the population of children across the United States of America is not beneficial to the culture or to the church, to our nation, to our civilization, and certainly not to the children. Also advocating for illegal aliens, which, even Cesar Chavez, who liked to boycott grapes, didn't do. He was against illegal aliens coming into the country. But the vicar over here, again, Monty Python, remarkable stuff, advocating for illegal aliens and lecturing the President of the United States. I don't know how many funerals we have to have in this country that are, and what do we have yesterday? The NFL quarterback who was away playing football on television when a gang of Chileans broke into his home and robbed his home while I believe his wife and kid were at home, and mobs taking over apartment complexes, Aurora, Colorado, the Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang, the commie state gangs that came here and have caused havoc all over the place. And then you lecture me that the Christian thing to do is to wave in more illegal aliens, which means more child sex trafficking, more adult sex trafficking, more exploitation of people that are trying to build a better life by coming to the United States. But when you're ruining the United States in the process, there's not going to be much to come to over the long term. But the Democrat Party, amazing stuff. And honestly, Vicar, if you're going to advocate for more illegal alien, you should know what you're advocating, because it leads to more terrible things: sexual abuse of young women being exploited, the rape trees with the underwear, the drug smuggling, the drug overdoses, the drug exploitation, the people that are deposited in the United States and owe the cartels tens of thousands of dollars that they can't afford to pay back, so they're exploited even further. So what you're advocating, Bishop, is an industry run by some of the most ruthless gangs on the planet Earth. And more of that does not make things better for anybody in Costa Rica or anybody in Arizona or anybody in New Hampshire, for that matter. Where did we arrest the Brazilian who was convicted of a mass murder? What did he murder 11 people in Brazil? And then he was working at somebody's house in Vermont or New Hampshire when he was arrested by ICE. And how about enforcing the laws? All right, now let's get to what happened yesterday. The Episcopal bishop at the Washington National Cathedral, a wonderful landmark in Washington. Marianne Butte, it's B-U-D-D-E. I'm going to go with Butte, and at the National Cathedral. And President Trump sitting in the front row. J.D. Vance, a recent convert to Catholicism, sitting next to him.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now.
The people who are scared now. Well, who's scared? People that live in neighborhoods where Venezuelan gangs have taken over? Those people are scared. How about kids going to schools where their shower rooms are now being visited by Venezuelan gang members who are men, and 12-year-old girls are, because that's something else you're advocating for here. Those are people that are scared. Parents that send their children out into the world, which is more dangerous because of Democrat Party policies. Those are children who are scared. But then she's like, oh, yeah, gay people are afraid they're going to be murdered. Well, that's because you guys have ginned up this fantastical mythology, this false universe where it's dangerous to be gay in the United States of America. I can, while you're advocating for Hamas in the Gaza, where they throw you off a rooftop and murder you if you're gay, and you guys are supporting them and chanting from the river to the sea, which is called to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Maybe you should talk about that, Bishop. Here's Bishop Butte.
There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families.
Uh-huh.
Some who fear for their lives.
They do? Why?
And the people who pick our crops
Oh.
and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants.
Slaves?
Who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals.
For less money?
They may not be citizens.
Slaves?
Or have the proper documentation.
Indentured?
But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
The vast majority. So is that 60%, and only 40% are criminals and gang members, whatever. Hey, Bishop, what percentage are gang members? What percentage are wanted for crimes in their home countries? How about law and order and national sovereignty and international order? That might be a good thing. Just saying. And then here comes Mercy, Mercy Me, because she's got mercy for the cartels, which, whose activities she supports, and the drug traffickers and the child sex traffickers, right? And then, showering with your daughter in junior high school, tattooed gang members from Venezuela. She's in favor of all of that. Here's the bishop.
I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away.
What?
And that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands.
How about ending war?
To find compassion and welcome here.
Uh-huh.
Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
For
We're
we
American.
were all once strangers in this land.
Well, I was born in New York myself, and raised mostly in the Chicago area, but that's not important now. The children in communities who fear their parents will be taken away. Are their parents criminals? Should we leave the children with their criminal parents? Because, breaking law number one is coming illegally into the United States of America rather than coming legally. I could go illegally to various countries around the world, too, but that would be illegal, wouldn't it? Well, it wouldn't be better. Yeah, okay. And their parents going to be taken away. What crimes have they committed? I'm just curious. Isn't that amazing? Why would they fear that their parents would be taken away? Why would their parents create a situation where their children have to fear that their parents will be taken away? Their parents should be good decision makers because they've got responsibility for children. And here's the bishop.
May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. Amen.
Amen. How about compassion for Lake and Riley and Lake and Riley's family? And there is a long list of Lake and Riley's. The bill passed through the Senate yesterday, 35, the Lake and Riley Act, to protect innocent young women from being murdered by Venezuelan gang members in the United States, marauding around the country, stealing, robbing, perpetrating all kinds of hideous and heinous crimes and murdering and raping. And there's more than enough of that going on, I think, with just the Democrats in the United States. But now you're importing Venezuelan gang members to compound the problem. And what was it yesterday? 35 Democrats in the Senate voted against the Lake and Riley Act because they're not on the side of civilization. They're the left. Aren't they amazing? Well, thanks, Bishop. That's great. You know, they have a gift shop at the cathedral, as they often do in big cathedrals and things, tourist attractions. And at the gift shop at the National Cathedral, they have a lot of gay LGBTQ T-shirts and coffee mugs and plaques and signs and things. I'm not sure what Bible they're using down there at the National Cathedral and the bishop. I think it's one of those Democrat Bibles. President Trump was asked about this after leaving the prayer service at the National Cathedral by reporters yelling at him, thinking it's another gotcha moment.
Mr. President, what did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the sermon?
What did you think? You like it? You find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I did think it was a good service, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They could do much better.
They could do much better. The thing was, he said it was a good service, but not much of a sermon, I think he said, but a good service, and he was being very nice and gracious, unlike the bishop, I've got to say. And, keep in mind that, let's go to her, because last night then she went on CNN with her friends on CNN.
I was speaking to the president because I felt that he has this moment now where he feels charged and empowered to do what he feels called to do. And I wanted to say, there is room for mercy. There's room for a broader compassion. We don't need to portray with a broad cloth in the harshest of terms some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
Some of you mean people that are here illegally, and honestly, the left. She's just a representative of the left. Forget about the Episcopal Church thing. It's much less important than her radical politics. And she's an advocate for drug cartels, for human traffickers, for transgenderizing children. Children. She's the one who used the word children. Why is it always the children? Stay away from the children, lady, if that's your real name. That's pretty amazing stuff. And she's an angry Trump hater, going all the way back to 2020 and the George Floyd riots and the riots at the White House that forced the evacuation of the president, burning the Church of the Presidents, which is an Episcopal church too. She didn't seem too upset by that. This woman, I think the Episcopal Church should have a little talk with her. Maybe the Archbishop of Canterbury should get her on the horn and tell her to get a job at a Unitarian church. So who is it? Congressman Mike Collins. Mike Collins says that the bishop should be added to the deportation list. I'm pretty sure he's mostly joking. Yeah, this is a lady who's been an anti-Trump voice in the news media for years now. Got to tell you. Let's go to the phones, Michael. Let's go to Sue, calling from Damascus, Maryland. Not Damascus, Syria. Sue, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris, and thank you for taking my call. When this bishop talked about people and fearing for our life, you know, I haven't had a good night's sleep in 4 years until Monday. And also, I have a son who's an attorney and has to go into that city, and I worry about his safety every day. But when this woman started talking, it reminds me, and I know that it's not in the Constitution, the separation of church and state. I know all the history of it. But this is a prime example why religious organizations should lose their tax-exempt status. We see it all the time in Maryland. You know, why should the taxpayers in the entire state pay for a $200,000 bond bill that gives the mosque over in Prince George's County a handicapped restroom? Why should the taxpayers of Maryland pay for the complete new roof for the Little Sisters of Charity or something in Baltimore? If they're going to get involved in political issues, and they come all the time to Annapolis, testify on bills, they're responsible for the blatant disregard of our immigration laws by bringing in tons of illegal aliens into our area. So why should we have any kind of tax exempt? If there's a fire at the National Cathedral, they use the fire department that you and I pay for. If there's police department that's needed, they use it for free. They don't pay any property taxes. It's time to stop this nonsense. It's not in the Constitution. And if you're going to get involved in politics on any level, you should lose your tax-exempt status and be treated like any other big business.
Well,
I'm so sick and tired of it.
Well, I've got to, you know, it's another example of the Democrats, the left, and the Democrats are the left in the United States. They've never been more left than they are today, not since Lee Harvey Oswald. Amazing stuff. But they politicize and poison everything.